Disclaimer: this is a fictional dramatization created for artistic, emotional, and educational storytelling purposes. All characters and events are entirely fictional and created using AI tools. No impersonation, misrepresentation, or harm is intended. The content contains scenes of danger involving child characters. However, no real persons or minors were involved in its production. Grace's Love Stories produces scripted, AI-generated stories that promote, entertain, inspire kindness, and emotional connection. We respect our viewers and strictly adhere to YouTube's policies.
They called her the Ghost of Thornhaven. For 10 years, Sarin Ashvale moved through the halls of the Grand Pack House like a specter, invisible to everyone who mattered. She scrubbed bloodstains from marble floors after council meetings. She polished silver that would never touch her lips. She served the Luna's meals with downcast eyes, knowing one wrong glance could earn her a beating. But beneath the tattered servant's collar she never removed, Sarin carried a secret etched into her flesh. A scar in the shape of 3 crescent moons, intertwined like a braid. It had been there since birth, burning with quiet heat whenever the Triplet alphas walked past her. She had hidden it for a decade. She had survived on silence and shadows. But tonight the color tears. Tonight they see the mark. And when the 3 most powerful alphas in the Northern Territories recognize what was stolen from them, they don't just lose their composure. They lose control. The ghost is about to become the storm. The Thornhaven pack house smelled of cedar smoke and roasting venison. It was the eve of the Bonding Moon Festival, the sacred night when mated pairs renewed their vows, and unmated wolves prayed to the goddess for their fated match. Lanterns flickered in every window. Laughter echoed from the great hall where the elite gathered in silks and furs. Sarin Ashvale heard none of it. She was on her knees in the eastern corridor, scrubbing a wine stain from the stone floor with a brush that had lost most of its bristles. Her fingers were cracked and raw. Her knees ached from hours of kneeling. A thin cotton dress hung loose on her frame, too big because she had dropped weight. Again, skipping meals to avoid the kitchen staff, who liked to trip her. She was 26 years old. She had served the Thornhaven pack since she was 16 when she had been sold by a band of rogues to Luna Revena as a debt payment. She had no memory of her parents, no wolf that answered her call, no place in the hierarchy except the very bottom. Footsteps approached, heavy, deliberate. Sarin pressed herself against the wall, making herself as small as possible. 3 shadows passed. She didn't need to look up to know who they were. She could feel them, like standing too close to a bonfire. Her skin prickled. The scar beneath her collar burned with a familiar ache, a heat that spread down her spine and pooled low in her belly. Kaelin, Theron, and Lysander Vexley, the Triplet alphas of Thornhaven. They ruled the pack together, a triad of power that had never been seen before in the Northern Territories. Kaelin, the eldest by 4 minutes, was the strategist. Cold, calculating, with eyes the color of a winter storm. Theron, the middle brother, was the warrior, built like a mountain, scarred from countless battles, radiating barely contained violence. And Lysander, the youngest, was the diplomat, charming, silver-tongued, with a smile that had seduced half the noble daughters in the region. They were mated to Luna Revena, or so the kingdom believed. Sarin kept her head down as they passed. She had perfected the art of invisibility. 10 years of practice. 10 years of swallowing her pride, her pain, her strange and forbidden longing, because that was the cruelest part. Despite everything, despite knowing they belonged to the woman who made her life a living nightmare, Sarin felt drawn to them. When Kaelin spoke in council meetings she was forced to serve, his voice resonated in her bones. When Theron trained in the courtyard below her tiny window, she couldn't look away from the brutal grace of his movements. When Lysander laughed, something in her chest ached with a hunger she didn't understand. It was madness. It was dangerous. It was the scar's fault. She was certain. The mark had always burned hotter when they were near, as if trying to tell her something she refused to hear. The triplets disappeared around the corner. Sarin exhaled, her shoulders dropping. Still, alive, little mouse? The voice slithered down the corridor like poison. Luna Revena Morvain stood at the far end of the hall, draped in a crimson gown that clung to her curves like liquid fire. Her black hair was piled high, threaded with rubies. Her amber eyes glittered with casual cruelty. She was beautiful. She was terrible. And she had made Sarin's existence a waking hell since the day she arrived. The wine stain, Sarin whispered, gesturing to the floor. I'm almost finished, Luna. Revena glided closer, her heels clicking against the stone. She stopped inches from Sarin, close enough that her perfume, roses and something metallic, filled Sarin's lungs. You missed a spot. Ravena's foot shot out, kicking the bucket of soapy water across the freshly cleaned floor. Gray suds splashed everywhere, soaking Sarin's dress, undoing an hour of work. Sarin didn't flinch. She had learned not to. Clean it again, Ravenna ordered. And when you're done, come to my chambers. I need my feet rubbed before the ceremony. She leaned down, her lips brushing Sarin's ear. And if I see you anywhere near my mates tonight, I'll have Theron break both your legs. He does enjoy breaking things. She straightened, smiled like a cat with cream, and swept away. Sarin stared at the ruined floor. Her hands trembled, not with fear, but with something hotter. Something that felt like rage. She pressed a palm against her collar, feeling the scar pulse beneath the fabric. Not yet, she told herself. Not yet, but something in the air felt different tonight. Electric, inevitable. The goddess was watching, and she was not known for patience. The great hall was a sea of candlelight and crystal. Hundreds of wolves from allied packs filled the space, dressed in their finest, drinking elderflower wine from goblets, worth more than Sarin would earn in a lifetime. A string quartet played in the corner. The scent of power and pheromones hung thick as fog. Sarin moved through the crowd like water, through cracks, carrying a tray of champagne flutes. She kept her eyes down, her step silent. The servant's collar was tight around her throat tonight. Ravenna had personally fastened it before the event, yanking the leather strap hard enough to leave bruises. Tighter, Ravenna had whispered, smiling. We can't have anything slipping. Sarin had said nothing. She never did. Now she wove between laughing nobles and preening alphas, refilling glasses, clearing empty plates, existing in the spaces between notices. She had almost made it to the kitchen doors when a heavy body slammed into her. The tray flew from her hands. Glass shattered, champagne sprayed across the polished floor, and the boots of a massive, red-faced alpha who reeked of whiskey. Watch where you're going, runt. The alpha, a visiting lord from the Eastern Ridge Pack, grabbed Sarin's arm, hard enough to grind bone. You got wine on my boots. I'm sorry, my lord, sorry. He yanked her closer, his breath hot and foul against her face. You'll lick them clean, is what you'll do. Sarin's heart hammered. She knew better than to resist. Resistance meant punishment. Resistance meant Ravenna's creative cruelties, the cold cellar, the silver-tipped whip, the days without food. But something in her snapped. No. The word escaped before she could stop it. Small, defiant, suicidal. The alpha's face purpled. His hand swung back to strike her. It never landed. A grip like iron closed around his wrist, stopping the blow mid-air. The alpha yelped, his bones creaking under the pressure. You will remove your hand from what is ours. The voice was ice and gravel. Sarin looked up. Kalen Vexley stood there, his storm-gray eyes fixed on the Eastern Ridge Alpha with cold murder beside him. Theron loomed like a war monument, his scarred hands flexing, and Lysander flanked her other side, his usual charming smile replaced with something sharp and predatory. The great hall had gone silent. Every eye watched. Alphas, the Eastern Lord stammered, releasing Sarin instantly. I didn't realize she's just a servant. You thought wrong. Theron's voice was a low rumble, the sound of an avalanche waiting to fall. Leave. Now. The alpha fled, nearly tripping over himself. Sarin stood frozen, her mind reeling. They had never intervened for her. In 10 years, they had never even looked at her directly. Why now? Why tonight? Then she felt it. Air on her throat. Cool. Exposed. Her hand flew to her neck. The leather collar had snapped when the alpha grabbed her, torn clean off and lying in the puddle of champagne at her feet. And the scar, her secret, her shame, her curse, was bare for all to see. 3 crescent moons, intertwined like a braid, glowing faintly silver against her skin. Kalen saw it first. His entire body went rigid, as if struck by lightning. His nostrils flared, and a sound escaped him, low, guttural, not entirely human. What? Lysander breathed, his golden eyes widening with shock. That mock. That's not possible. Theron moved fastest. He grabbed Sarin's chin, tilting her head back, exposing the scar fully to the light. His touch sent electricity coursing through her veins. The mark blazed brighter, responding to him, to all of them. It's real, Theron growled. His pupils were blown wide. Wolf bleeding into man. The triad mark. She's wearing the triad mark. The hall erupted in whispers, gasps. The string quartet stopped playing, and from across the room, Luna Revena's champagne glass slipped from her fingers and shattered on the floor. She was already moving, cutting through the crowd like a blade, her face twisted with fury and something else. Fear. Don't listen to them, Revena commanded, her voice carrying over the murmurs. She's a rogue-born nobody. She probably carved that mark into her own flesh to manipulate the alphas. It's a trick. A pathetic, desperate trick. Sarin opened her mouth to speak, to deny, to explain, but no words came. She was drowning in the sensation of 3 pairs of eyes locked onto her. 3 bonds she had suppressed for a decade, suddenly roaring to life like wildfire, carved it. Kaelin's voice was quiet, dangerous. He hadn't stopped staring at the mark. The triad mark cannot be forged. It appears at birth on the one destined to complete the bond. We were told our true mate died over 2 decades ago. His gaze slowly lifted to Revena. We were told you found the body yourself. The silence that followed was a living thing. Ravena's smile flickered. Kaelin, darling, you can't possibly believe. Why is she wearing a servant's collar? Lysander interrupted. His voice had lost all its charm. Why have we never seen her face in 10 years? Why does she smell like us? He stepped closer to Sarin, inhaling deeply. His eyes flashed gold. She smells like pack, like home, like mine. Theron snarled the word, his wolf fully surfacing. She smells like mine. The 3 alphas closed ranks around Sarin, a wall of muscle and barely restrained violence. They weren't looking at the crowd. They weren't looking at their supposed Luna. They were looking at the servant girl who had scrubbed their floors for a decade, and in their eyes, Sarin saw recognition. Hunger, rage, not at her. At the woman who had kept her from them. Revena recovered fast. She hadn't clawed her way to the position of Luna by being easily rattled. This is absurd, she declared, her voice ringing with practiced authority. I am your bonded mate. I have ruled beside you for 10 years. You cannot honestly believe that this creature, she spat the word, is anything more than a delusional servant with a self-inflicted scar. She gestured sharply to the guards lining the walls. Seize her. She has clearly gone mad, possibly feral. For her own safety and the safety of this pack, she needs to be contained. 2 guards stepped forward hesitantly. Theron turned, just turned. One look from him. Both guards froze mid-step, then retreated back to the walls like scolded dogs. No one, Theron growled, touches her. She is pack property, Revena snapped. I own her debt. I have the contract, show us. Kaelin's command cut through the chaos, like a blade through silk. He still hadn't moved from Sarin's side, but his voice carried the weight of absolute authority. You claim to own her debt. You claim the triad mark is false. You claim our true mate died 2 decades ago. His storm-gray eyes pinned Revena in place. Prove it. Now. In front of the entire court, Ravena's composure cracked just for a moment. A flicker of panic behind her amber eyes. Kaelin, this isn't the time or place. We have guests. The ceremony is cancelled. Lysander's voice was silk wrapped around steel. Until this matter is resolved, nothing proceeds. Whispers erupted from the crowd. This was unprecedented. In 10 years, the Triplet alphas had never publicly contradicted their Luna. They had been the picture of unity, of strength. Now that picture was shattering in real time. Sarin stood at the center of it all, trembling. The mark on her throat pulsed with warmth, as if reassuring her. But her mind was spinning. This couldn't be happening. She was nobody. She was less than nobody. She had spent a decade convincing herself that the strange pull she felt toward the alphas was a delusion, a broken Omega's fantasy. I didn't carve it, she whispered. The words came out cracked, barely audible. I've had it since I can remember. I've always had it. Ravena's eyes snapped to her, filled with venom. Shut your mouth, you lying little. Let her speak. Lysander's command was quiet but absolute. Sarin swallowed hard. Every eye in the hall was on her. She had never spoken in front of more than 3 people at once. Now hundreds watched, judged, waited. The rogues who sold me, Sarin continued, her voice gaining a fraction of strength. They called me the marked one. They said I was cursed, that no pack would want me because of the scar. They said it made me wrong. She touched her throat. Luna Revena bought me the day I arrived. She took one look at the mark and paid triple the asking price. She said she was being charitable. Charitable, Theron repeated, the word dripping with contempt. She made me wear the collar from the first day. Said it was tradition for debt servants. Said I could never remove it until my contract was paid. Sarin's voice cracked. But the contract never had an end date. I checked. I found the document once, years ago. It said my debt would be cleared upon my death. The silence in the hall turned toxic. That's a slave contract, an elder wolf called from the crowd. Those have been outlawed for 3 centuries. Revena laughed, but the sound was brittle. She's lying. She's clearly been planning this for years, waiting for the perfect moment to, the healer. Kaelin's interruption silenced her. Summon the pack healer. Elder Mirren can verify the authenticity of a mate mark. If the scar is self-inflicted or artificially created, she'll know instantly. His eyes met Ravena's. Unless you object to an impartial examination. Ravena's jaw tightened. Of course not. I welcome it. It will prove once and for all that this wretch is a fraud. But her hands were shaking. Sarin noticed. The alphas noticed. The crowd parted as an ancient woman shuffled forward, her white hair braided down her back. Her milky eyes sharp despite their age. Elder Mirren had served Thornhaven since before the Triplet's grandfather was born. Her word was law in matters of the goddess's magic. She approached Sarin slowly, studying her with those unsettling pale eyes. Child, the healer rasped. Show me your throat. Sarin tilted her head back, exposing the glowing mark. Elder Mirren reached out with gnarled fingers, tracing the 3 intertwined crescents. Her touch was cold, papery. The mark flared brighter. Mirren inhaled sharply. Goddess above. What? Kaelin demanded. What do you see? The healer turned to face the alphas, her expression grave. This mark is genuine. More than genuine. It is the most powerful triad bond I have ever witnessed. It was placed by the moon goddess herself at the moment of this child's birth. She paused. And it has been suppressed, deliberately, for years. I can feel the residue of dark magic woven through her blood. Someone has been feeding her moonsbane. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Moonsbane, the forbidden herb that could sever a wolf from their bond. Mute the voice of their inner beast. Given in small doses over time, it could keep a fated mate from ever recognizing their partner. 3 pairs of alpha eyes turned to Revena. You poisoned her, Lysander said softly. You found our true mate, and instead of bringing her to us, you poisoned her. You enslaved her. You made her scrub the floors of the house she should have ruled. You made her serve you. Theron's voice was barely human now, his wolf surging beneath the surface. You made our mate kneel at your feet. I am your mate, Revena shrieked. I am the Luna of Thornhaven. I have given you everything. I have sacrificed. You have given us nothing. Kaelin's voice dropped to a whisper that somehow carried through the entire hall. We never completed the bond with you. In 10 years, the mate mark never appeared on your skin. We thought we were defective. We thought the goddess had cursed us. His hands clenched into fists. But we weren't cursed. We were deceived. He stepped toward Revena, and for the first time in a decade, the Luna of Thornhaven stumbled backward. You have committed treason against this pack, Kaelin announced. You have enslaved a fated mate. You have poisoned a member of the Alpha bloodline. You have lied to your ruling council for 10 years. The punishment, Theron growled, is death. Ravena's composure shattered completely. She looked around wildly, searching for allies, finding none. The nobles who had once fawned over her stepped back, distancing themselves from her contamination. You can't do this, she hissed. I know things. I have allies. The Eastern Ridge Pack, the Crimson Fang Coalition, will not save you, Lysander finished. Guards, take her to the cells. She will face tribunal at dawn. No. No. Revena lunged, not toward the door, but toward Sarin, her fingers hooked into claws, aiming for the exposed throat, for the mark that had unraveled everything. She never made contact. Theron moved like lightning, catching Revena by the throat and lifting her off the ground with one hand. His eyes were fully wolf now, glowing amber in the candlelight. You don't get to touch her, he snarled. You don't get to look at her. You don't get to breathe the same air as her. He threw Revena to the guards, who caught her and began dragging her toward the dungeon stairs. She screamed curses the entire way, threats and promises of vengeance, until the heavy doors slammed shut and silence fell. The hall remained frozen. Then, slowly, Elder Mirren lowered herself to one knee. Then another elder. Then another. A wave of submission rippled through the crowd as wolf after wolf knelt before the trembling servant girl with the glowing mark on her throat. Sarin couldn't breathe. Her legs buckled, but she didn't fall. 3 sets of arms caught her. 3 bodies pressed close. 3 heartbeats thundering against her own. Kaelin on her left. Theron at her back. Lysander on her right. We have you, Kaelin murmured against her hair. We're never letting go, Theron rumbled. You're home now, Lysander whispered. And for the first time in 10 years, Sarin let herself cry. They carried her to the Alpha's private quarters, a suite of rooms she had only ever entered to clean. Now she sat on a velvet chaise worth more than her entire existence, wrapped in a cashmere blanket that smelled of cedar and pine and something wild. The triplets hadn't left her side. Kaelin stood by the window, staring out at the moonlit grounds, his jaw tight with barely contained fury. Theron paced like a caged predator, his boots wearing a path in the ancient rug. Lysander sat closest to her, his golden eyes never leaving her face. "Drink," Lysander said softly, pressing a warm cup into her trembling hands. "It's honeyed tea. No moonsbane. I watched the healer prepare it myself." Sarin took a sip. The sweetness hit her tongue, and something else. A tingling warmth that spread through her chest, her limbs, her blood. "What's happening to me?" she whispered. Her skin felt too tight. Her bones ached. The scar on her throat was burning hotter than ever, pulsing in rhythm with her heartbeat. Elder Mirren shuffled forward from the corner, where she had been mixing herbs. "The moonsbane is leaving your system. I've given you a purging tonic. The process will be," she paused, choosing her words carefully, "uncomfortable." "Uncomfortable?" Theron stopped pacing. "Define uncomfortable." The herb has been suppressing her wolf for over a decade, perhaps longer, depending on when the dosing began. Mirren's pale eyes studied Sarin with clinical interest. "When the block is removed, her wolf will emerge. Violently. The longer the suppression, the more powerful the release." Sarin's cup slipped from her fingers. It shattered on the floor, tea splashing across the stone. She couldn't breathe. Her lungs were on fire. Her spine was bending, cracking, reshaping itself in ways that shouldn't be possible. Sarin. Kaelin was suddenly in front of her, gripping her shoulders. "Look at me. Focus on my voice." But she couldn't focus on anything. The world was fracturing into shards of light and shadow. A voice was rising inside her, ancient and furious, a howl that had been silenced for far too long. "They caged us," the voice snarled. "They starved us. They made us crawl. I can't." Sarin gasped. "Something's wrong." Something's, her back arched. A scream tore from her throat, but halfway through, it became something else. A howl. The transformation ripped through her like a lightning strike. It wasn't gradual. It wasn't gentle. One moment, she was a trembling woman on a velvet chaise. The next, she was something else entirely. The triplets stumbled back as Sarin's body exploded outward. Bones snapped and reformed, skin split, and knitted back together beneath a coat of fur so white it seemed to glow. She grew and grew, her mass doubling, tripling, until she filled half the room. When the light faded, a wolf stood in the wreckage of the Alpha's quarters. But not just any wolf. She was massive, easily the size of a warhorse, with fur like freshly fallen snow streaked with veins of silver. Her eyes, once a muted gray, now blazed with molten gold, and on her chest, where a wolf's heart would be, the triad mark shone like a brand of liquid moonlight. Elder Mirren dropped to her knees, her ancient face slack with awe. "Goddess preserve us. A lunar wolf. I thought they were legend." The triplets stood frozen, their own wolves howling inside them, desperate to answer the call of the magnificent creature before them. Sarin, or the wolf that was Sian, lifted her massive head. She looked at the three alphas, recognition flickering in those golden depths. Then she opened her jaws and let out a howl that shattered every window in the tower. The sound carried across Thornhaven, rolling over the packhouse, the training grounds, the distant forest. Every wolf in the territory heard it. Every wolf stopped what they were doing and tilted their head toward the moon, because that howl wasn't just a sound. It was a summons, a declaration, a coronation. The true Luna had awakened, and she was done being silent. The shift lasted only minutes, but to Sarin, it felt like lifetimes. When her bones finally stopped screaming and her skin stopped burning, she found herself on the floor of the Alpha's quarters, naked and gasping, surrounded by shattered glass and splintered furniture. 3 coats landed on her simultaneously. She would have laughed if she had the strength. Instead, she lay there, cocooned in cashmere and wool and leather, breathing in the mingled scents of her mates, because that's what they were. She understood it now, felt it in every cell of her being. The bond wasn't just a mark on her skin. It was woven into her soul. "Can you stand?" Kaelin's voice was strained, barely controlled. She could hear his wolf pacing beneath the surface, demanding to be let out. I think so." Theron didn't wait for her to try. He scooped her up as if she weighed nothing, cradling her against his chest. His heartbeat thundered against her ear. "You're burning up," he growled. "The fever hasn't broken." "It won't," Elder Mirren said from the doorway. She had retreated during the shift, wisely putting distance between herself and the chaos. "Not until the bond is completed." Lysander's head snapped toward her. "What do you mean, completed?" "The triad mark has been suppressed for over a decade. Now that her wolf has emerged, it's demanding what was denied." Mirren's pale eyes moved between the 4 of them. "She needs to be claimed. Properly. By all 3 of you." If the bond remains incomplete, the fever will consume her within days. Silence. Sarin felt heat creep up her neck, and not just from the fever. She was acutely aware of Theron's arms around her, of Kaelin's intense gaze, of Lysander's sharp intake of breath. She's barely conscious, Kaelin said tightly. We can't. You can, Mirren interrupted. And you must. Unless you want to watch your true mate die from a bond sickness that you have the power to cure. She turned to leave. I'll ensure you're not disturbed. The claiming must happen before dawn. The door closed behind her. The room felt smaller, suddenly. Hotter. The air crackled with tension thick enough to taste. Sarin. Lysander knelt beside her, taking her hand. His touch sent sparks racing up her arm. We would never force you. If you need time, if you're not ready. I've waited 10 years, Sarin whispered. Her voice was hoarse, but steady. I've watched you from the shadows. I've dreamed about you in my cold little room. I've hated myself for wanting something I thought I could never have. She looked at each of them in turn, the strategist, the warrior, the diplomat. Her mates. I don't want to wait anymore. Something shifted in the room. A collective exhale. A decision made. Kaelin moved first, crossing the space between them with predatory grace. He cupped her face in his hands, tilting her chin up. Then you won't, he said and kissed her. It was like touching a live wire. Energy surged through the bond, lighting up pathways that had been dark for a decade. She gasped against his mouth, and Theron tightened his grip on her. A possessive rumble vibrating through his chest. Our turn, Lysander murmured. And then there were hands everywhere, mouths everywhere, and 3 heartbeats synchronizing with hers until she couldn't tell where she ended and they began. The triad mark on her throat blazed white-hot. And somewhere in the depths of her soul, her wolf howled with pure, savage joy. Mine, the beast sang. Finally, finally mine. Dawn came slowly, painting the shattered windows in shades of rose and gold. Sarin lay tangled in silk sheets that smelled of her mates, her body pleasantly exhausted. The fever finally broken. The triad mark on her throat had changed. It no longer glowed with desperate heat. Now it shimmered softly, content complete. 3 matching marks had appeared on the triplets during the night. Kaelin sat at the base of his throat, silver against his pale skin. Theron's curved along his collarbone, bold and prominent. Lysander's graced the inside of his wrist, elegant and visible. They were bound now. Truly. Irrevocably. But questions remained. Sarin sat up slowly, wincing, at the pleasant ache in her muscles. Kaelin was already awake, sitting in a chair by the window, dressed in fresh clothes, a stack of documents in his lap. His storm-gray eyes lifted to meet hers. How do you feel? Like I've been reborn, she admitted. Like I'm finally whole? A ghost of a smile crossed his face. Good, because we have much to discuss. He held up one of the documents. I had my investigators working through the night. We found Revena's private records, hidden behind a false wall in her chambers. Theron stirred beside Sarin, propping himself up on one elbow. And our mate's story is far more complicated than we imagined. Kaelin's expression darkened. Sarin, what do you know about your parents? She shook her head. Nothing. The rogues who sold me said they found me wandering alone as a child. I have no memories before the age of 6. That's because your memories were taken, Kaelin said quietly, along with your wolf. Along with your identity. He stood and crossed to the bed, handing her a yellowed photograph. Sarin's breath caught. It showed a woman with silver white hair and golden eyes standing beside a tall man with a warrior's build. They were smiling, radiant, clearly in love. And in the woman's arms was a baby wrapped in a pale blanket. Those are your parents, Kaelin said. Serafina and Kael Morvan. The name hit Sarin like a physical blow. Morvan, but that's Revena's surname. Yes. Lysander sat up now too, his golden eyes heavy with the weight of the revelation. Sarin, Revena is your aunt. Your father Kael was her older brother, and your mother Serafina was the last known lunar wolf before you. The room spun. Sarin gripped the sheets, trying to anchor herself to reality. I don't understand. If they were my parents, where are they? Why was I with rogues? Why didn't anyone? Because they were murdered, Theron said bluntly. His voice was gentle despite the harsh words. 22 years ago. The official story was a rogue attack, but according to these documents, he gestured to the papers Kaelin held. Revena orchestrated it. Sarin felt sick. Why? Why would she kill her own brother? Power, Kaelin said simply. Your mother was the lunar wolf, destined to mate with the ruling alpha triad. That was us, even then, though we were just infants. Our parents had already negotiated the betrothal. Serafina's daughter would one day be Luna of Thornhaven, but Revena wanted that position, Lysander continued. She was ambitious, ruthless, and desperate to escape her family's shadow, so she made a deal with a faction called the Eclipse Order. Dark practitioners who specialize in forbidden magic. They killed your parents, Theron growled. They suppressed your memories, your wolf, and your very identity. They gave you to rogues with instructions to keep you drugged and hidden. And Revena took your place. But she didn't have the triad mark, Sarin whispered. How did she fool everyone? She didn't need to fool everyone, just us. Kaelin's voice was bitter. We were children when our parents died. We were told our fated mate had perished in the same attack that killed yours. Revena was there, conveniently, to comfort us through our grief. By the time we came of age, she had positioned herself as the only viable Luna candidate. The bond never formed because she wasn't our mate, Lysander said. We thought we were broken. We thought the goddess had abandoned us. We never questioned Revena's story because we had no reason to. Until now. Theron finished. Sarin stared at the photograph, at the faces of parents she couldn't remember. Tears slid down her cheeks, but they weren't tears of sorrow. They were tears of rage. She took everything from me, Sarin said softly. My family, my identity, my wolf. 10 years of my life spent on my knees. She looked up at her mates, and her eyes were no longer gray. They were blazing gold, her wolf surging to the surface. I want justice. Kaelin took her hand, pressing his lips to her knuckles. You'll have it. But Revena isn't working alone. The Eclipse Order is still out there, and according to her notes, they're planning something. Something connected to the Crimson Moon rising next month. What happens at the Crimson Moon? Sarin asked. The triplets exchanged glances. It's the one night of the year when the barrier between realms is thinnest, Lysander explained. When dark magic is at its peak. If the Eclipse Order has been waiting for something, that's when they'll strike. Theron cracked his knuckles. Then we have 1 month to find them, destroy them, and make sure Revena tells us everything she knows. She'll never talk willingly, Kaelin said. Sarin smiled, and there was nothing soft about it. Then I'll make her talk. The triplets stared at their mate, seeing not the timid servant who had scrubbed their floors, but the lunar wolf who had slept inside her all along. First, Sarin said, rising from the bed and wrapping a sheet around herself like a queen donning a robe, I need to address the pack. They need to know who I am. They need to know who she is. And they need to know that things are about to change. She walked to the broken window and looked out at Thornhaven, at the territory she had served as a slave, but would now rule as Luna. No more hiding, she said quietly. No more silence. The ghost of Thornhaven is dead. She turned to face her mates, her golden eyes blazing with power. The storm has arrived. Sarin descended the grand staircase on the arms of her 3 mates. She wore a gown of midnight blue silk, hastily altered from Revena's wardrobe. It felt like justice, wearing the false Luna's clothes. The triad mark on her throat glowed softly in the morning light. Hundreds of wolves filled the hall, summoned by the alpha's howl. News of last night had spread like wildfire. Last night, a great wrong was exposed, Kaelin announced. For 10 years, our true mate was hidden among us as a slave. Today, we set things right. Any who challenge this claim may speak now, Lysander declared. A figure pushed through the crowd. Tall, gaunt, with eyes like chips of obsidian. Elder Voss. There was something wrong about his scent, metallic, bitter. I challenge. The lunar bloodline was exterminated for a reason. The Eclipse Order cleansed them to protect our kind. Gasps erupted. An elder openly admitting allegiance to the Eclipse Order. Let him speak, Sarin said quietly. I want to hear him confess. Voss laughed. The lunar wolves were tyrants who could bend wolves to their will. We called a threat. Revena was a useful tool, ambitious, easy to manipulate. She did the dirty work. And now, Kaelin's voice was ice. Now I invoke the ancient right. Trial by moonfire. If she survives, she may claim the Luna seat. If she fails, her bloodline dies with her. The crowd erupted. Trial by moonfire hadn't been invoked in centuries. She just shifted yesterday, Lysander snarled. She hasn't. I accept. The triplets turned her horror etched on their faces. Sarin. No. Kaelin gripped her shoulders. I've spent 10 years being invisible, worthless, nothing. If I hide behind you now, I'll always be the servant girl who got lucky. Her eyes flared bright gold. I need to show them what I truly am. Theron's jaw clenched. If you die, then you'll avenge me. But I won't die. I've survived too much to burn now. She turned to face Voss. Prepare your flames, Elder. Let's see who burns. The trial took place at midnight, in the sacred grove. Ancient oaks formed a natural amphitheater around a stone circle carved with runes older than memory. At the center sat a pit filled with silverwood branches. Sarin stood before the unlit pit, barefoot, wearing only a thin white shift. The triplet stood at the edge, forbidden by ancient law from interfering. Moonfire is the breath of the goddess herself, Voss proclaimed. It does not burn the worthy, but it consumes the false. Get on with it, Sarin said flatly. He slammed his staff against the ground. The runes blazed silver, and the silverwood erupted into flame white, blinding, cold and hot simultaneously. Sarin didn't hesitate. She walked into the flames. For a moment there was nothing but white. She couldn't see, couldn't hear, and couldn't feel. But she could feel a presence, vast, ancient, feminine, child of my blood. The voice resonated in her soul. You have suffered. You have been broken, caged, poisoned, and erased. And still you stand. Sarin couldn't move. The presence surrounded her completely. You are not just a lunar wolf. You are the last of my direct line. My blood runs in your veins. My power sleeps in your soul. Wake it. Something cracked open inside her reservoir of power, so vast she nearly drowned. But she didn't drown. She drank. Outside the flames, the crowd watched in terror as the moonfire turned silver, spiraling upward toward the stars. The ground shook. Impossible, Voss whispered. No one commands the moonfire. The flames exploded outward. When the light faded, Sarin stood at the center, unharmed, but transformed. Her hair was now pure silver. Her eyes blazed gold so bright they illuminated the darkness. The triad mark had expanded across her collarbone like silver vines. She looked at Voss. He was running. No. The word left her lips, and Voss froze mid-stride, suspended by invisible force. You killed my parents, she said softly. You stole my childhood. You tried to burn me alive. Voss whimpered. Please, I was following orders. Tell me about the order. Tell me about the Crimson Moon. Everything. The words poured out. The Eclipse Order's headquarters. Their plan to summon something ancient during the Crimson Moon. Their leader, the Hollow King, who had waited centuries for a vessel. They wanted Revena to bear the vessel, but she was barren. They didn't know you survived, that I was right under their noses, Sarin finished. Take him to the cells. Guards rushed forward without hesitation. Sarin turned to the crowd. The Eclipse Order threatens us all. In 3 weeks, they will attempt to unleash darkness upon our world. Her voice rose like thunder. Thornhaven stands, and when the Crimson Moon rises, we will be ready. Who stands with me? The answering howl shook the mountains. 3 weeks passed in preparation and revelation. Sarin trained daily, learning to control her vast power. She could share strength, heal wounds, sense lies, project her consciousness across distances. She also discovered what it meant to be truly loved. The night before the Crimson Moon, Sarin stood on her balcony watching the sky darken to blood. Kaelin's arms wrapped around her from behind. Theron sat nearby, sharpening his blade. Lysander played a soft melody on his guitar. Scared? Kaelin murmured, terrified, not of dying, of failing, of losing you. You walked through goddess fire and came out stronger, Theron said. Some dusty cult isn't going to stop you. Lysander set down his guitar. You're not alone anymore. Whatever comes, we face it together. Sarin turned in Kaelin's arms. I love you. All of you. I should have said it every day. Theron pulled her into a crushing embrace. You're not losing us. Not tonight. Not ever. For a moment there was only warmth, only the 4-part heartbeat of a completed bond. Then the alarms began to scream. The Eclipse Order attacked at dusk, pouring through portals like wounds in reality. Dark wolves with hollow eyes, practitioners hurling black fire, and at the center the Hollow King. He was impossibly tall, wrapped in writhing shadows. Where his face should have been was only void. The last lunar wolf. How precious! Sarin landed before him in her lunar form, massive and blazing with power. You wanted a vessel. Here I am. The Hollow King laughed. You think borrowed power can stand against eternity? Shadows erupted toward her like serpents. Sarin opened her jaws and howled. Silver light exploded from her throat, shredding the darkness. The corrupted wolves screamed as the light touched them. Impossible, the Hollow King hissed. You made a mistake, Sarin growled. You thought lunar wolves were dangerous because of our power. But that's not why you feared us. She lunged. Her jaws closed on shadow stuff that should have been intangible. The Hollow King shrieked as silver light poured into him. You feared us, because we're connected to something older than you. something you can never corrupt. Cracks appeared in the void where his face should be. Light poured through pure white, the goddess's light. We're not just wolves. We're her teeth. Sarin tore him apart. The explosion of light was visible for 100 miles. Portals collapsed. Corrupted wolves fell, dead or freed. The practitioners fled, run down by Thornhaven wolves showing no mercy. When the light faded, Sarin stood in the crater, human again, covered in ash and blood and glory. Her mates reached her first. They didn't speak. They just held her. Around them the pack howled, not in warning, not in fear, in victory. 1 month later, the Great Hall of Thornhaven had been rebuilt. Not just repaired, transformed. The walls were lined with silver bears bearing the lunar wolf crest. The chandeliers had been replaced with floating orbs of soft white light. And at the far end, 4 thrones sat on a raised dais, where there had once been only 3. Sarin stood before the gathered crowd, wearing a gown of silver silk that flowed like water. Her hair, still pure metallic silver, was braided with moonstones. The triad mark on her throat glowed softly, a permanent reminder of the bond that had saved them all. Beside her stood Kaelin, Theron and Lysander, dressed in formal black with silver accents that matched her gown. And kneeling at the base of the dais, in chains of pure moonsilver, was Revena Morvane. The false Luna had aged decades in the month since her imprisonment. Her beauty had rotted from within, her cruelty finally showing on her face. She stared at the floor, unable to meet the eyes of the woman she had enslaved. Revena Morvane, Kaelin announced, his voice echoing through the hall. You have been found guilty of murder, conspiracy, enslavement, and treason against the pack. The sentence is exile to the Bleakwood. Stripped of your wolf, stripped of your name, stripped of everything you stole. Revena flinched, but said nothing. There was nothing left to say. Guards dragged her away. She didn't fight. She didn't scream. She was already broken. Sarin watched her go, feeling nothing but a distant satisfaction. The ghost of the girl who had scrubbed floors whispered that it wasn't enough, that Revena deserved death, deserved pain, deserved every cruelty she had inflicted. But Sarin wasn't that ghost anymore, and living as nothing, as no one. Stripped of everything that was a fate worse than death. Revena would understand that now. Elder Mirren stepped forward, carrying a crown of woven silver and moonstone. She bowed her head to Sarin. Kneel, child. Sarin knelt. By the authority of the goddess, by the witness of this pack, by the bond of the triad, I crown you Luna Sarin of Thornhaven. May your reign be long. May your justice be true. May your light never fade. The crown settled onto Sarin's head, and the hall erupted in howls of acclamation. She stood and turned to face her people now, truly and completely. Servants she had once worked beside, guards who had once ignored her, nobles who had once looked through her as if she didn't exist. Now they were all looking. Now they all saw her. And every single one of them was kneeling. Sarin smiled, took her mate's hands, and spoke the words that would define her reign. Rise, all of you. We kneel to no one but the goddess herself. She looked out at the sea of faces, her golden eyes warm but fierce. Not anymore. The crowd rose. And in the front row, she spotted a familiar face, a young servant girl with hollow cheeks and frightened eyes, the same look Sarin had worn for a decade. Sarin stepped down from the dais and crossed to the girl, taking her trembling hands. What's your name? Mira Luna. Sarin smiled gently. Mira, you're not invisible. You're not worthless. And from this day forward, you're not a servant. She glanced back at her mates, who nodded in understanding. Your pack. Full member. Equal. Mira burst into tears. And somewhere, watching from the spirit realm, a goddess smiled. If this story made you feel something, smash that like button and subscribe for more tales of revenge, redemption, and ridiculously attractive alpha males.